feel that it's something that is unique to us, that other teachers don't experience this. No one else has this going on. Um, and it is important, I think, to remember that we are part of a much wider teaching community and that there are shared experiences. And so, in light of that, here's our first chat task if you are following along with us on Zoom. Um, go into the chat box, and I'd just like you, if you are willing, share with us what has been your biggest challenge as a teacher so far in your career. Okay, there's some ideas coming in. Classroom management, applying exactly the methodologies that I've learned. They don't understand and cooperate. I'm assuming that's the Italian room teachers. Managing behavior, so classroom management, lack of students' motivation, interaction, methodologies. Yeah, okay, teaching grammar to adults. That's interesting, Ron. Different levels of students. What about the way that you feel as a teacher? Convincing teachers that language proficiency comes before teaching training courses. Interesting. I'll give you another few seconds if you want to share. Okay. Take a look at the chat if you are on Zoom, and you may well feel teacher identity, Ron is saying, yeah, that's something I have always struggled with. Um, planning, yeah, this is something we will touch on later for sure. Adapting to every student's unique learning style and emotional needs. 100% agree. Now, I can agree and empathize and sympathize with a lot of these ideas, preparing material. Yep. And I think if you're reading along on the chat, you can probably resonate with some of these ideas. So the first thing that I want you to keep in mind is that as a teacher, wherever you are part of a much larger teaching, learning, education community, and that your experiences are shared, and that the difficulties or struggles that you may be having either in your classroom, in your teaching, or for you as an individual, as an English speaker, they're not unique to you; they are shared, and that's a motif, an idea that we're going to come back to again. Um, Now, I think before we continue, I ought to expand a little bit on who I am. Like, why am I this guy talking to you about this today? Um, so I started teaching in one form or another in 2007. I think I started doing voluntary work in high school in Ghana in Africa, and then whilst I was doing my undergraduate and then my master's, I was working part-time in language schools, and I did some summer school work. Took my CELTA in 2011, and I took my DIPTESOL then in 2020 as a reaction, my reaction to COVID. Um, I've been working in teacher training and development since about 2016. And since 2022, I've been working with teachers and professionals, helping them develop their English at the highest level, at C1 and C2 levels. Most of the people I work with nowadays are teachers, and they come to my courses looking for generally one of three things. Either it's learning English to open doors, because learning English can allow you to take a step up in your career, maybe to sit an official exam in your country, maybe allowing you to take on more teaching roles. For many of them, there's a personal element as well. It helps them feel more confident in themselves as a teacher when they are using English. It helps them find a better version of themselves. And there's also a professional development side, and many of them recognize that learning English to their highest level can help them feel better able to teach their learners. Of course, we need to remember, if we're talking about professional development, anything, in my opinion, anything that we do to develop professionally needs to have as an ultimate goal, as the main goal, it's going to help our learners learn better. Whatever we're doing to develop ourselves needs to have some tangible, some real effect in the classroom. So this leads me on to talk about my 5 myths about teaching English. Now, I'm saying my 5 myths. For a while, it was this slide was called "The 5 Myths About Teaching," and I don't want to say that I'm some authority on this, but after 18 years teaching, and a lot of that working with teachers, I think these are the 5 things, the 5 ideas that I encounter most often. And we're going to look at them, we'll explore them. I'll get you to do some little tasks for some of them. And behind each myth, there is, I think, a truth. And so we're going to talk a little bit about it and then turn the myth on its head so that we can turn this negative idea into something positive for you. So, the first one. I'm an effective teacher because of where I come from. Or I'm an ineffective teacher because of where I come from. I would imagine for most of the people, maybe all of the people watching this, there is an eternal battle for you that is convincing certain people that just because you're not from the same country as me, you can still teach English, probably better than me in a lot of circumstances. And I'm minded of 2 conversations or 2 situations I've been in my career. One of them was 2 weeks ago. As well as the work I do with teachers, I also do some teenage classes in a small language school. I was outside the school talking to parents, helping students come in and out. And I've only been in that academy for a couple of years. One of the parents came up to me and she asked me in Spanish, "Are you a native?" And I said, "Yes, I am from England." And she said, "Ah, good. That's what we need." And whenever someone says that to me, I have to challenge it. And I said to her, "Why?" And she said, "Oh, well, because our students need to learn good English." And I just said to her, "Well, they're learning good English because the 2 teachers that work in the language school, myself and my business partner, we are qualified, experienced, talented teachers. It's got nothing to do with where we are from. And the mother sort of looked surprised by this. And I said, no, it's not about where we are from. It's about the process that we took to get to where we are. The other situation I recall, a few years ago when I was working in management in another language school, and the school owner had a meeting with myself and the other manager because they were very concerned that the non-native teacher they'd hired was a good choice, not because of their qualifications, but because they weren't native. That's the last time I'm going to use the N word in this workshop. In my opinion, and I will fight this until my final breath as a teacher, the final minute I have in a classroom or online. It's your skills and your knowledge that make you an effective teacher, not your passport. And you need to fight that too. And you need to keep fighting that battle. If someone says that you're not suitable for a job or for a student because of where you're from, tell them how you got to where you are and how that makes you the best teacher for that learner. So it's about skills and knowledge. It's not about where you're from. Second thing I often hear is that I have to be an expert in English. And let's explore this a little bit. We're going to go back into the chat. Thinking about learning a language. What different things are involved in learning a language? What do students need to know in order to learn English, for example? Let's just see in the chat. What do they need? All right, 4 skills. Right, so reading, writing, listening, speaking. Have fun, right. Communication skills. Possibly 4 skills, possibly something else. Let's keep this going. What do you need to learn a language? Patience, right. Overcoming fear of speaking, TPR. Goals, exposure, consistency, motivation. There's lots of things coming out here. Now, as you're looking at this list, as you're typing the things in, discipline, classroom management, practice. Think about your role as a teacher in facilitating this. And there are things coming out here that are really clear for you, I'm sure. And there are other things like learner autonomy, motivation. I remember years ago, I had a teenager who was not doing his homework, not doing well in exams. And I spoke to my director of studies about it. And they said to me, "Oh, well, you've got to motivate them." I'm like, right, how do I do that? And I tell you what, 18 years later, I'm still not really sure exactly how to motivate people. Extrinsic motivation is much more common than intrinsic. Exposure, focus on form, interaction, communication skills. There's a lot, right? There's a lot involved in learning a language. And I think my question then, going back to this, I have to be an expert in English. Well, there's a lot of things that you need to be an expert in if you really want to be an expert. And I would say teaching isn't necessarily about expertise. Now, I'm not saying that you can go into the classroom without anything. It's not as though you can just rock up, like anyone can go in and be a teacher. But being that expert, it might be something that we want to achieve for ourselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it um it isn't a necessity. I think a necessity for me is building relationships. Um, there's a teacher community called the TEFL Development Hub on Facebook. And a few years ago, one of the questions on there was, what's the, I think, what's the fundamental aspect of creating a good class? And I said classroom management, and other people said similar things. And someone came on and said, no, it's about building a relationship. And that really lit a light bulb for me. And it is, it's all about the relationship, the rapport, the trust between yourself as a teacher and your learner or learners. And I think that's what you should be focusing on. And instead of trying to be that expert in everything and maybe feeling a bit unsure about yourself if you're not that expert, think about the relationships that you've got with your students and then how you can use that relationship to help them develop in all those areas of expertise that they need to be a proficient language learner. Oh, skipping through. Oh, it's all gone wrong. Okay, everything has gone wrong. Let me go back. Everyone close your eyes. This isn't happening. Okay, brilliant. I'm an expert at teaching online and I still can't do the tech. This is the third thing I often hear. If I make mistakes, I lose credibility as a teacher. Think about that. Think about how far you believe or agree with that statement. I think for myself, for a long time, I thought that was true. And I would often get quite angry at myself if I did make a mistake or I taught something wrong or I wasn't able to correct something. Um, yeah, so I'm not allowed to make mistakes. That's not true. But mistakes are interesting things, actually. Let's look at them. Um, if I may, I'd like to bring in my classroom. Um, have a look at these three sentences. Um, just have a read of them and think about how you would correct them and what reason you would give for correcting it. What explanation would you say to your students? So that first one, the teaching team are working hard on the new syllabus. Just gone into the chat, and Marwa has said mistakes are acceptable but should be corrected. Absolutely. And I think it's about building that trust again with your students where you can feel that if you do make a mistake, you can go back and say, "Oh, guys, I'm sorry, I did that wrong." It takes a lot of nerve to do that, actually, to be able to stand up in front of your students and say, "Oh, I made a mistake." Um, but we'll see in a little bit when we talk about my students. It's actually quite a humanizing experience. So that first sentence, the teaching team are working hard on the new syllabus. Um, how would you correct that? What mistake is in this? Let's put in the chat. Right, is. Oh, that's an interesting idea, Nessa. I might come back to that later. Oh, Siham has gone through the whole thing. Okay. Right. So we're seeing that the first one, I'm going to try and be clever here. Uh, so we would correct the first one as is, right? Um, Now this one, I've picked this mistake. Um, Probably more of a slip than anything. Subject verb agreement. It is the most common mistake in my opinion, in English, in learners' English. And it's something that I see consistently from A1 through to C2. And lots of my C2s still do it because it's a systemic little slip. Um, and I make this mistake as well. So interesting. What about the second one? What's wrong with the second one? That's an interesting idea, TPR. Yeah. Yes, we can elicit. So that second sentence, if he would have had some English coaching, it might have gotten better. How would you correct that second sentence? Silence has befallen the chat. Well, um, my grammar book would tell me, yeah, I think the Siham was correct before. So if he had some English, it might have gone better. So we would take out this because the grammar book tells us that we can't do if and the modal, the auxiliary in the same clause. Okay, we'll come back to that. And what about the third one? Um, Welcome to today's online class. I'm joined here with Steffi, Anna, Maria, etc. Okay, it's not I'm joining. I'm here. Okay, yes. So we can do two things. We can say, I'm here with Steffi, Anna, Maria, or we can say, I'm joined. Now, I am joined. So be, past participle, it's a passive. So I'm joined by. Now, there's a reason for me having chosen these three mistakes. The first one, the most common mistake. The second one, well, we'll come to it later. The third one is something that I have struggled with for months with my C2 group, not knowing whether to say I'm joined here with or I'm joined here by. The answer is by. It's a passive. But this is a mistake that I've been consistently making. Does it make me a weaker teacher? No. Um, am I going to forget this now that I know the answer? Absolutely not. And I think what's important is that mistakes are a way to get deeper into English, both for you and your learners. Lots of things have been coming out of the chat that uh, the students will often pick up on these errors. They're often a lot more aware of errors than we think, and that we can be working with them. I agree entirely. I'm sorry, 015089. I wish I knew your name. You're very active in the chat. Um, I adore mistakes. Mistakes are one of my favorite things as a teacher. Actually, in a face-to-face situation, if a learner makes a great mistake, I shake their hand. Corinne, lovely. Um, so mistakes are a way to work with the language and do something meaningful. It shouldn't be something that you beat yourself up about. Okay. Another thing I often hear from teachers, both anywhere in the world, actually, is this frustration. I have to create all my own material because course books are bad. I can't use a course book. Um, so just quickly in the chat, are you for or against course books? Just type for or against. Okay, Corinne produces her own lessons. Lovely. For course book, for course book, for. Interesting. Oh, course books are a big no. For. Keep it coming. Don't be afraid to type in the chat. If you're watching along afterwards or on YouTube now, think about, are you for them or against them and why? They're needed by new teachers. Yep, if they're inclusive. They can help me structure my courses. Yep, depends on the course book. True. Yes, right. Um, the IH Director of Studies, you've taken the words right out of my mouth. There's nothing wrong with a good course book. Um, it's not about the book, it's about what you do with it and how you use it. It's a roadmap for the teacher. It provides structure. It provides structure for the learners. Holly, lovely. Um, it's course books are wonderful things. I'm not saying that you have to use them by any means, but if you feel that you can't use a course book because it's lazy or it's out of date or you should be doing something better, don't worry about it. My flagship C2 course, I'll tell you about it later. We use a book. I love the book. I'm going to keep using the book. It's a way of, for me, avoiding huge workloads to create all my own material and to use the existing material in an effective way. Um, don't be afraid of coursebook. Okay, we're on to myth number 5. Um, I need to know all the grammar rules. Do you? Right. Ron says not even a native speaker knows all the rules. Oh, I said the word. Ugh. Want to wash my mouth. Myth number 5. This is me. Good. Good. I'm glad this is you because I want to challenge it. And I'm going to challenge it in a way that you're not expecting, I hope. I'm going to bring in my classroom again. Now, take a look at this sentence. We corrected it earlier. Is this wrong? Can you just type in the chat, is this sentence incorrect? Yes or no? Some people saying yes, some people saying no. I feel it is. Oh, I keep that feeling. Feeling grammar is good. Intuition is a very important thing. But let me show you another example. Let me show you a final example, if I can. So all of these are acceptable uses of conditionals, acceptable constructions of conditionals. The first one is American English, where very often the would have is combined with the if clause. Um, I actually took this from a social media comment about something that happened recently, not necessarily spoken English. Again, it's written comment. If you will keep going to work late, it's no wonder your boss is getting angry. Using that will to signal speaker frustration with a repeated situation. Again, perfectly acceptable. Grammar, perfectly correct. Can I go to the toilet? Well, if you must. Again, perfectly fine. Um, Now, who is it? Michael Lewis. I hope I've got yeah. Michael Lewis and the English Verb. A book that shouldn't be out of print anymore. My cat has come to say hello. Um, but unfortunately it is. But he says, thank you, Diego. Um, Lewis says that a rule is only a rule if it's true 100% of the time. And um, I don't think rules, for me as a teacher, I don't teach rules anymore. Um, I explore patterns. And I encourage my teachers on my courses to do the same, that we're not interested really in hard and fast rules that are true all the time, because that's not how language works. That's certainly not how English works. It's fluid. It reflects the attitudes of the speaker and the listener, or the reader and the writer. Um, and what's a lot more interesting is exploring how language is used in a communicative sense, right? So I would say scratch that need to look for rules and instead look for patterns about how language is used. So those were my 5 myths. I hope you found something there that resonate with you. Now, I want to take you now into the learner perspective. When I'd been invited to give this webinar, I immediately went to the teachers on my C2 course um, who I thought would be able to provide some insight, and I asked them, "What advice would you give to teachers like you?" And I've pulled up a couple um, with their permission. I'm going to show you a couple of things here. So first of all, uh, so Anna's an experienced teacher from Italy. And the first thing she said is, "We're all in the same boat." Takes us back to the egg carton, doesn't it? She says she remembers going into her first B2 exam prep class, and she was so stressed because she wanted to control every possible question that she thought the learners were going to ask. She was so scared that the learners were going to judge her badly. She also says this interesting thing that I've heard from a few places, that they have this upsetting thing that some schools want you to pretend that you are from a different country. Anna then says, thanks to the course that she's on, she feels more prepared, more able to identify her limits. She says it really helps seeing that even I don't have all the answers and I have to go away and find them sometimes. And before she saw that happening, she felt that it could be horrendous when the student asked a question and she didn't know the answer. The teacher has to have all the answers. Teacher has to know all the words. And she says, dealing with your limits can help you feel much more confident. She wishes she'd started her Cambridge journey earlier. Then let's talk about Estefi, who's an experienced teacher and center manager from Spain. Um, and Estefi gave much more direct suggestions. She said you need to know how to learn what you're teaching efficiently. I think what she means is to not spend forever agonizing how to teach the past perfect or the third conditional or reported speech, reported speech, um, and to break it down. We'll come to that in a second. She says you need to avoid over planning. It takes you nowhere. You need to teach in English instead of your own language. This will help your English to improve. And she says you need to stop being ashamed of making mistakes. And if you can, share them in class and correct them together. I think those are very insightful comments from Anna and Estefi. So, as we move into the final part of this webinar, let's think about if language learning is part of your continuing professional development, what are your next steps? I'm going to give you three very practical things. One of them is a little bit of a sales pitch, but I hope you will give me a couple of minutes for that. The first is to tweak, to make little adjustments to your lesson planning. I don't know what you do when you plan a lesson. Probably it involves some things like planning the stages and the activities, thinking about interaction patterns and who is speaking to who, and is it individuals or groups or pairs, class. You'll probably want to include focus on different skills in some of your lessons, and maybe you're thinking as well about how to create individual learning outcomes, personalization, differentiated learning, and so on. These are all essentials, great things, but maybe add another 5 or 10 minutes the next time you're teaching a grammar lesson and include some language analysis. This can go beyond the basic meaning, form, pronunciation. Think about what problems your learners are going to have and how could you solve those problems either before they have them or if they happen, what are you going to say? What are you going to do to help them? You could design your whiteboard or your blackboard if you're teaching the second conditional. Well, what things would you write up on the board? Where would they be? Are the students going to write them down or are they just going to look at them? Do they stay on the board the whole time or does it get replaced with something else? That board work can be very, very helpful for you thinking about the essentials of teaching that language. And find translations, find examples that are relevant to your students, create examples that mean something to you and your learners. It will make the whole language learning process more engaging for everyone, and it will help you to learn that language more. I mean, one of the best ways to learn is to teach, right? The second thing I recommend that you do is to become a reflective teacher. That means spending a little bit of time before or after your lesson thinking about what you want to achieve and how it has gone. Here are some things you can do. You can keep a little journal, the good things, the bad things, the things that worked, the things that didn't. In the same way as you would set aims or objectives for your learners when you plan, maybe you want to do the same for you as a teacher. Maybe there's something that you want to improve with your language or with your classroom management or whatever. Make it part of the plan so that you're involved too. You had a bad lesson. Yeah, we all have bad lessons. It happens. But don't fret, don't stress about it. Don't go away thinking, oh, I'm the worst teacher in the world. You're not. We all have make mistakes. We all have bad lessons. And it might not be you, it might be the learners. But take some time to reflect on what happened and think about what you would change next time and use that as a learning opportunity. And finally, something I've taken from Teresa Bestwick and Fiona Moughlin's new book. Do this with a partner. Again, so you're breaking down the walls of that egg box. At the end of the week, focus on your language teaching and reflect together on something new that you tried and how it went in class. Something you're grateful for. Something that inspired you and something fun that happened during the week. Just take 5 minutes to reflect on that. Keep it focused on your English if you want to, and you will find that that's a really nice, friendly way of reflecting on your progress as a teacher and as a learner, because the two go hand in hand. And the final step, the final thing you can do is level up your English. Take it to C1 or C2. We've discussed before why you might want to do that. Now, I'm learning Spanish. I have been learning Spanish for 14 years. It's going pretty badly. Um, because as a teacher, I'm quite particular about the sort of courses I want, right? Um, so I want something that's online so that it fits in with my schedule. I don't have to go anywhere. I can do it from my desk or on my phone or whatever, and it'll fit my busy schedule. And if things change in my schedule, I don't need to worry about missing a class. I want some live sessions that are communicative, but I also want to be able to study on my own, and I want someone to tell me how to do that. Um, I also, it would be nice to have the social element of learning still, even though I'm online. So I want a vibrant and supportive online community. And as well, I want support from an expert teacher. Of course I do. Um, and well, that's what I'm looking for in a language course. And that's how I have designed my C1 and C2 language courses. They are flexible, they're online. There is a mix of self-study and really communicative, dynamic live sessions. The online community is an incredibly supportive element of it, and it's a very exciting part of the course. And you get this. Um, and a lot of a lot of my students are very grateful for the support that I've been able to give them. So there are two courses I have available. There's a 12-week C1 designed to get you ready for exam day in 12 weeks. That's Cambridge C1 or IELTS, and both are possible because of the structure of the course. And we're able to do around 70 hours of guided study. That's equivalent to many year-long courses. All the material is included. There's also a C2 course, a 6-month C2 course that's launching again in September. That's for Cambridge C2 or IELTS again. It's much longer, much more in depth, and it's a very positive course. Both of them are very fun, engaging, motivating, and professionally developing courses. I also offer, I've got early bird discounts going on at the moment. There's a referral bonus. And as well, if any of you are interested and you sign up from this webinar, if you use the code EDUCAST10 when you sign up, I'll give you an extra 10% discount. So I shall open this up to the floor. I believe we have a few minutes for questions. I hope that this has been useful and interesting for you. and motivating for you to see how English language learning can be a part of your continuing professional development and also helping you feel a bit more confident and comfortable as a teacher. Okay.
Thank you, Ben. You can go ahead and quit sharing screens, and
Okay.
we're just going to get into some comments here, maybe some questions. If anyone has a question, you can go ahead and put that in the chat box. I would just like to say that, um, you talked about the 5 things there that you thought were, like myths, and that maybe there's some facts or something maybe true about that. And I think one of the things I've always encountered in my 35 years plus of teaching is that native speakerism.
Mm,
Uh, I found that to be a very terrible thing when I first entered the EFL world, uh, and that many schools actually only hired native speakers,
mm.
even though they weren't trained teachers, a lot of
Yep.
them just being backpackers
Yep.
on their 6 month, 1 year journey through Europe. And then they would just kind of, get a job teaching at a language school to earn some money. And then they were on their
Mm,
way to another city somewhere else to do
mm.
something else. Uh, and as the head of a department at a university, uh,
Yeah.
always had to interview teachers. And, I met a lot of those teachers,
Mm, mm,
but of course, I could never hire them because working at a university in Germany, you got to have a degree.
mm,
You can't just say I'm a native speaker. So I was lucky in that sense that I didn't, feel like I had to hire them. I wasn't like someone who had a private language school. That happened later. But even
mm.
then, when I had my private language schools, I never hired those kind of
No,
teachers because I
no.
always felt, and I'm talking to everybody here in the audience, I feel that from my experience of owning schools, dealing with teachers, uh, that non-native teachers were actually the better teachers
Mm,
because they had actually learned the language. They had actually been through a language learning experience and
mm.
knew how it felt uh, to learn another language. They learned the grammar, the structure, and they could explain it.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of native speakers, sometimes I would hire some just for speaking classes because some
Mm.
people just wanted to do speaking. And let's face it, a lot of adults just want to speak. They don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
do
yeah.
grammar. They don't want to do writing. They don't
Mm,
want to do listening. They don't want to do
mm,
reading. They just want to come in and have a 90-minute class and speak for, 90 minutes and that's it and go home.
mm,
And, there's a lot of that at private language schools, but not at state universities. That doesn't happen. Yeah,
mm.
and there's so, I feel that if you're a non-native speaker, which a lot of people probably are here in our audience,
Yeah.
and you've learned to be a teacher,
Mm.
you probably know more about teaching English than a native speaker. So
Oh, definitely. I think we, yes. I mean, if you gave your average native speaker a C2 exam, um, they would,
they
they
wouldn't
might,
pass it.
they might
Not
pass because,
not with a high
but,
score.
but not with a high score, precisely. They
Yeah.
wouldn't get full marks. Um,
I've
and
actually done that, Ben, by the way. I actually did say that to teachers, to
mm,
teachers who would apply for a job who
yeah,
did not have any kind of certifications. I would just
mm,
ask them, go ahead and take the test, a C2 test,
mm,
and then depending on your score, we'll talk again. A
yeah,
lot of them just would never come back because for me, that was a filter. And I
mm,
think, private language schools should do that. They should make native speakers take a C2 test and see if they pass it. They'd be surprised how many would pass it, would
mm.
probably not get a lower score,
Yeah.
something less than
No,
75%.
no, no, completely, completely. But I think we need to be cautious, I think, about emphasizing too much the C2-ness because I know
Well, a lot of
plenty of,
native speakers are not C2.
but yeah, also all of the teachers on my C2 course currently are not certified C2 and yet are working as teachers.
Mhm. Well, I
So
think somebody could be a B2 teacher and still do
mm,
well.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I
You
don't.
also talked about Ben, about uh, you know, making mistakes,
Mm,
and I found that also to be interesting because, uh, you know, and I saw a lot of that in the chat box,
mm,
is that we're humans, and
yeah.
that has nothing to do with being a native speaker or not native speaker. That's
No, it
just,
has to
it
do with
just,
being a person using
yeah,
the language. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, absolutely.
And that's really important.
Mm.
You didn't bring it up, but what are your favorite methods of delivery in the classroom? Uh, we get into now methodology
Mm.
because uh, what would
I'm I am a huge fanboy of lexical approach. So uh, using spoken or written texts as a way in for the learners and keeping it very learner centered, so that they are exploring the language for themselves and then figuring out how to use it themselves. But that only works with certain groups and certain levels. I'm an eclectic teacher. Um, I uh, I subscribe to principled eclecticism, as I would imagine most teachers do. For those listening that have no idea what I'm saying, that's the idea that you don't prescribe to a fixed methodology, and that rather you cherry pick, you take the methodologies that you think suit you as a teacher and your learners best. And
definitely.
I think
I
that's
think every teacher has a
probably the
bag of tricks, yeah,
yeah, I
when it
think that's
comes to
probably the most
methodology.
authentic um, response to that question.
Mhm. That's true. Yeah, I think that if you go to my LinkedIn page, you'll see that I have quite a few articles about methodology. And
Hmm.
but you gotta. I think every teacher needs to take the time to know what's out there as far as methods and approaches are concerned,
Hmm.
and find, like you said, something that fits them,
Yeah.
fits the learners, but also fits the situation,
Hmm.
the learning context.
Yeah.
Because you can't do project-based learning if you're only doing 45-minute classes. Yeah,
No.
that's not going to work.
Hmm.
And maybe you need to go to some maybe task-based learning that might be okay, and things like
Hmm.
that. Yeah, but you definitely have to. Would you agree that teachers do need to know something about methodology?
Um. mhm. Yes and no. I mean, I was. I'll tell you about it from my perspective. So I did my CELTA, and between my CELTA and my DIPTIS or my Delta, I had what 9 years. Um, and I found that by the time what I really got from doing the DIPT was not so much new methodologies or approaches, but an appreciation of um, the the rationale behind those choices. And I felt that knowing about the methodologies made me a more principled teacher. Um, but I'm not sure it necessarily made me a better teacher, if you know what I mean. Um, and I think,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
that there's a lot of teachers who are using methodologies that
mm,
are really evidence-based methodologies,
mm.
but they're just not aware of it.
And is
uh,
that a problem?
no,
No.
absolutely not. If they're using them and they're using them effectively, I think that's
Mm,
great. I don't think you need to always. When I've done teacher observations, I've
mm,
noticed that they're doing great task-based learning, and I said, well, could you explain that? Kind of like,
yeah,
what were you doing?
mm,
They explained it, and they didn't realize they're explaining task-based learning.
yeah, yeah,
So, and And I think that that's okay too. But you know,
Mm,
at some point, I think teachers should take a sort of a class on methodologies just to
mm,
find out what's out there, so that they can sort of improve their awareness of what they're doing. Because if you know, you talked about
mm.
self-reflective, being reflective
Yeah.
teachers, reflective practice. That's definitely, you know, the better you are at knowing what's out there,
Mm.
then of course your reflection's going to be better. That process.
Yeah,
But if you
I
don't
think.
know what to reflect on,
Mm.
then that's not going to probably be a very good or effective reflective practice. You know.
Yes, no, I agree, but I want to come back to something I said in the webinar, and I can see that Holly and Corinna are mentioning the same thing in the chat. Um, that I think whatever you do, whatever reading about methodologies or reflective practice or whatever CPD you're doing, it has to come back to your learner's experience in the classroom. If it's just for you knowing more about methodology, there's no value to it.
Oh, that's definitely true. I mean,
Yeah,
what's the use of knowing theory if you can't put it into practice? Yeah.
yeah,
And you can only put it into practice in the classroom with your learners.
yes, precisely. Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
yeah.
That I totally agree with.
Mm.
Uh, you know, Mo, before I turn this over to you, I would just like to talk to the audience one more time and thank them for coming
Mm, I
to
agree.
our Ramadan event. And Edicast does a lot of different things about professional learning and CPD. And I don't know why my camera went off. Is it on, Mo?
You seem to be frozen,
Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know
but
why. But anyway, uh, keep in touch with us. Go to our internet site, go to our YouTube site, and find out more about what Edicast is doing as far as continuing professional development. And join us again during our Ramadan events. And Mo, I'm going to turn that over to you.
you're muted, Mo.
Oh yeah. Thanks, Ron. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Ben, for this wonderful talk. It's a really beneficial one, especially for all teachers. You have tackled a lot of issues. And the N word, yeah, so no need to talk about it again, you
No,
know.
we do need to
It
talk
doesn't
about it, but
exist.
it
Yeah, it doesn't
I
exist.
wish it didn't exist. We all need to fight it. Um, in every time that we hear it, every time that that argument comes out, we need to fight it because um, ultimately it's about an industry trying to the teaching industry, the ELT industry, trying to keep getting students and keep getting clients um, with an outdated argument. And
Yeah.
yeah, we need to
Yeah,
fight it
so
tooth and claw.
of course, yes.
Well, you know, there's a lot of schools, and I would say my experience tells me from being in this business for a long time that it's mostly private language schools that promote that concept of a
Mm,
native speakerism,
mm,
because they put that on their internet sites. We have native speakers, and
mm.
I'm just horrified at who some of these people are. But that is against the law in Germany, I can tell you that.
No,
And even
it
though it
yeah.
is against the law, and there has been a couple of schools that have been sued, and there's
Mm,
been court cases about that,
yeah.
schools still continue to use the word native speaker. But
Mm,
again, my experience tells me that non-native speakers are sometimes the best teachers
yep, I agree.
when it comes,
Yeah.
because they've gone through a language learning process, which native speakers are not. They have, but not the same kind of language learning, because you can't compare going through a language learning experience in your mother language as that of learning English in a foreign country and having to go through a language learning process there. That's
Mm,
different
I
because
think
that's the
the amount of
difference.
exposure, the
It's
amount of
yes.
exposure,
mm,
yeah. So that's the only difference between those who speak English as a first language and to speak English as you know, a second or a foreign language. The amount of exposure to the language itself in daily life situations. Yeah, so because you know, I'm a non-native speaker, English speaker. I'm from Egypt. My first language is Arabic. And I can't speak, I cannot teach Arabic. So being a native speaker doesn't mean that you are the best English language teacher ever.
No,
right?
No, it's about skills and knowledge and qualifications and experience.
You know, I speak fluent Spanish and I speak fluent German, and I could never teach a Spanish class. Never. I would be scared to death. I wouldn't even know where to start. And I speak German every single day of my life because I live here. I work at a German university, and I speak German all day long. I give lectures in German, but I could never teach German.
Which is fascinating, given the argument that we're saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating that non-native teachers are the best teachers because they've gone through the process, but ourselves as language learners feel uncomfortable teaching the languages we've learned. Fascinating.
Yeah. So I'd like to thank you again, Ben and Ron, for being here with me today. This is Mohammed Nabil again, the founder of EduCast International and the host of the event Illuminate and Elevate. Yeah. Because Illuminate and Elevate. So actually it's a series of webinars that are held in the month of Ramadan every Monday and Thursday, which means that our next couple of webinars will be next Thursday at 9 p.m. Cairo time. So an email will be sent to your registered email addresses, you know, to know, of course, about the upcoming sessions during this month. So again, thanks, Ben, for being part of this, and thank you for offering, you know, our attendees a discount on your courses.
Absolutely.
If you please could you know, put your LinkedIn link account in the chat box so that people can follow you.
Absolutely. 1 second.
Okay, take your time. So again, everyone, please fill out the form or the feedback form on the webinar so that you can get your certificates of attendance. And also, it's not only about your certificates. It's also about knowing your feedback on what we are offering, because we've been there for more than 5 years, and we are honored and really proud to have one of the most or the biggest online conferences out there, with over 20,000 registrations in just 3 versions of this conference. And we also host a lot of professional development webinars. We also have a couple of podcasts. The most well-known one is EduCast Interviews podcast, and it is followed by people from 87 countries. Can you believe it? Yeah, 87 countries. So everyone.
And Mo, we had over 120 countries, didn't we, in the EduCast conferences?
174. No, 47. 47. 147. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I got lost count of that. I didn't realize it was so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So many. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's a global community of English language teaching, and we're really proud to be managing this community, and we're also proud to be offering all of this to them, because we believe that teachers deserve a lot. So again, thank you for being part of this, and thank you for attending today, and we're looking forward to seeing you next Thursday. Again, the form is changed. Here is the new form. Please click on the link. I'll leave it there, you know, for a couple of more minutes so that you can fill it out to get your certificates of attendance. So thanks again for joining us, and see you next Thursday.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.